Hello, everybody. This is Steven again for Game Tech and Match. And after a long wait, I am releasing a second video on the upcoming project I'm working on, Hajime Adventures. So basically, what went on since the first update video is quite a lot, actually. Not necessarily things that you can, see from just at a glance. However, there are a few cool tricks, that I've used, cool new methods that I've just, developed myself, to figure out a way to do what I want to do with the game. So, in terms of the engine itself, we're still on Unreal Engine. I believe this is version 4.14, if I'm not mistaken. However, there are a few lags and a few things that need to be addressed in the future releases, of Unreal that will make this project flow a whole lot better for me. Considering I am a one-man team, I don't have anybody else working with me on the project. It takes time sometimes to figure out some stuff. A lot of the graphic stuff, like lighting, as you can see here, a little bit of the lighting is way off. Like certain things are not lit properly, and it is a big issue, especially when you have a game which, part of the the whole shtick of the game is the way it looks. You know what I mean? Like the graphic assets that I've created for the game need to really be presented in a certain way for the game to look appropriate. And that's one of the major things that I'm going to need to address in the next update. However, for this one, I did, have a bunch of new stuff, as far as weapons and skills and attacks and spells and stuff like that. I did have to tone it down a little bit. Certain things were a little bit too crazy, and certain things, I had to listen to your guys' feedback, and some of the feedback that I got was that some of the attacks were a little too over the top as far as the meteor, there's a big meteor attack that I featured in the previous video, and that was a little over the top. And of course, that was intended to be over the top. I am a big fan of these big crazy attacks that are really satisfying. When you unleash something that heavy on an enemy, you do have that good sense of reward that tickles your pleasure centers in your brain, and that's the experience I want people to have with the game. Now we can see a new spell that I've created that is indeed a sword that's being spawned out of the ground through alchemy and is being thrown at anything and if you notice, it goes in the direction that the character is looking at. I did introduce a crosshair in the middle of the screen. If you see, they have a little dot, which is a little offset, just so it's not dead center with the way because of the way I wanted to implement that feature. Is I didn't want to have anything that's obstructing the view of the player, so I had to make it as small as possible and as not in the middle as possible, in a way where you can kind of use perspective to choose where you want to launch your attacks. And of course, with a game like this being an action game, there's no auto lock-on features or stuff like that. So I really want the players to be able to aim at a general direction. I don't want the things to just be pinpoint all the time, as a lot of video games do. You know why? Because at the end of the day, in real life, when you're, let's say, throwing something at someone, you don't have a crosshair necessarily in your retinas, to aim somewhere. You just kind of have to use your generic sense of, motion and distance, and it's kind of something that I wanted to replicate in this game. And I know that it is a rather simple looking game. However, I do want to implement mechanics that are quite in depth, like things like I just mentioned with the crosshair. Another thing also that I wanted to play around with a little bit was the level design. And if you notice here, we're in some type of fortress, I would say, I guess you can call it. And for now, there are no enemies. I had to take out the enemies, guys, because as I mentioned, every asset in the video game the textures, characters, everything are things that I've created, except for the animations. Because not because I can't do it, just because it would be extremely time consuming for me to do that as a one-man team. I am going to do it later on, you know, if I'm able to hire an animator. That would be great. But for now, you know, just for testing purposes, you know, like the animations on the internet that I can find are just fine. It's not a problem at all for now. But yeah, I did want to play around with a little bit of level design, so I did have like a few things implemented. As we just saw, like there was like a hidden button that I clicked somewhere, and then, you know, you had like a graphical like response to that, and then it unlocks a door, but it has a timer. As we can see, when the character looks back, the door closes, and that's not like an automatic thing that is triggered once you arrive in the room. It's really just a timer, so you have to figure out the quickest way to get to that point, you know, before the timer runs out, because, you know, the door is going to close and you're going to have to restart the puzzle all over again. Once you do that, it gives you access to another room, that gives you access to another room, and then, you know, you pretty much figure out where I'm going with this. This is pretty much, I would say, reminiscent of the Zelda Ocarina of Time ages, you know, where a level could be not necessarily the biggest, but tricky enough to make you feel like you have a lot to do in it. You know, tricky enough to make you feel like you have things to solve before you can progress to the next stage. And even though you might have to backtrack to something, it's never going to be the same experience every time. So that's, you know, the type of mentality that I'm adopting for this project here as far as level design. And also, there's a few things, you know, that I've added in terms of, like, you know, the actions and the combat and overall movement. As you can see, like, pretty much I've already demonstrated that earlier on in the video. Is the I would say, quote-unquote hookshot. It's pretty much, you know, like a alchemy type skill, I would call it, and it just basically, you throw it at something and then it just reels you towards that point. The beauty of that skill that I absolutely love is that it doesn't work all the time. You do have to have a certain level of skill to make it work every single time. You know, like, for now I have it set at like a static level of skill where it works around, I would say, 2/3 of the time, or maybe like 4/6 of the time. So it's like pretty interesting to play around with stuff like that, because, you know, a lot of times in video games when you play something, it's pretty like, it could get pretty repetitive or pretty like predictable, you know what I mean? Because you know that if you press B, for instance, your sword is going to swing every single time. But what happens when, you know, your sword doesn't swing properly, or you miss your target? You know, in RPGs, you do have like a mathematical equation that calculates the miss rate for you. So it's just random. It's just automatically calculated. So even though it looks visually that you hit your target dead on, you know, it still shows as miss sometimes, just to give you like some extra challenge in the combat. You know, we've seen this in video games, like, you know, throughout the entire Final Fantasy series, where even though you would hit an enemy dead on, even when it's a turn-based, you know, you can't really not hit your target dead on. Well, mathematically, there are some, you know, algorithm that calculate a miss rate, so that way, you know, you have some extra challenge, and it could really turn battle around in, you know, times like these. So the same thing was implemented for the hook shot. Basically, once you for instance, let's say like you're attacking someone that's really far, you need to reach like a vantage point really fast, and you're in the air, and, you know, you have like inertia and momentum. So if you don't use your skill in time, you might end up falling off the level, or dying, or falling in a pit, or, you know, in traps or stuff like that, and you might have to use the hook shot. However, what happens when it doesn't work that specific time? You know, you may end up in a bit more of a pickle than you would have anticipated. And that's the whole idea here, you know, just to make it a little bit more challenging. So I believe that would be enough rambling. This is pretty much what I've been working on lately with the engine. I know it's not the huge, the biggest update video, you know, there's not like 1,000 new things added, but, you know, keep in mind, I am working alone and completely zero budget at all. So it may take a little bit more time for me to figure out some stuff rather than just buying a bunch of assets. However, I really do enjoy doing that because I am learning and I can become, really, really knowledgeable in the field of game making just by doing things like that. So that would pretty much be it. I know I'm showcasing a little bit more graphic assets in this demo. If you can look at like some of the walls, these are some new assets that I've created, and it's all very like squarish, cubic, but not like I would say like not like Minecraft or something like that. More voxel art than Minecraft. And it is the type of art style that I want to adopt, and which is another reason why I took out the enemies that were showcased in the previous demo, is because they were too organic. They were like spiders and stuff like that, and I didn't even create them. I just took them just to test out the combat aspect and the damage taking and inflicting. I'm sorry, and I am moving away from this. I'm gonna create new assets, like new enemies that are more like voxel art like, and that's gonna help me out. So that would be it for the update video of Hajime Adventures. Sorry, can't even pronounce my own game title. Hajime Adventures. That would be I would say not the largest update so far, because the first one was the newest one, so of course there was much more new stuff in there, but that one is quite significant because I know how hard I've been working on that, and I know how, I would say, tedious the task can be at times. So if you guys appreciate this, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps me out, really lets me know what you guys like, and of course leave me a comment so I can know exactly what you guys are looking for. Maybe tutorials, maybe you want to learn how I did something, maybe you just want to share ideas. Maybe give me some new ideas or some new tips and tricks that I can use. Remember, I am doing this by myself, so any help that I can get from you guys would actually be terrific. Alright, so I am talking for way too long by now, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. I'm launching another update video this week, I would say by the 1st of January 2018, so please stay tuned and subscribe if you like these type of contents. And of course, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, people.